How's it going?
I was muted. I'm sorry. Now I'm good. Welcome. And let me get there we go. There's the name.
Yeah, I was trying to sing that. I was like,
it was a quick intro. But all I was basically saying is welcome to the show. We have B.A.Turner and you, and I just want to cut right to the chase. So anyways, welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for
how's it going, guys?
Thanks for the half the time I swear to God I forget to mute because I mute during the intro shit. Because one time I like coughed and I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? So anyways, here we are. So yeah, man, tonight. Oh, well, first of all, BA, good to finally like meet you.
Me too.
Not in person, but you know how it is fucking these days. Tyler, this is you're becoming like a usual, man.
Yeah, and when there's nothing else, you can always give me a shout.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna start giving you cutbacks. You're almost like a co-host. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways, and our number one fan is here. Wow, let me bring her up.
She made
it. She made it all the way from Berlin, Germany.
Nice.
Tired here for a bit. No audio, thank you. Now I have audio, thank you. Cool. All right, so here we are. So, wow. So, anyways, yeah, what I want to basically talk about is the whole novelist, indie novelist community, because Tyler is like, you're like straight novelist, but it's like manga, right?
Yeah.
And BA, you're a novelist, but you kind of are also in the indie comic space.
Yep.
Right. So, and I'm kind of like only in the indie comic space. So it's like between the three of us, you know what I mean? It's like we got all sorts of weird shit going on, which is what I like, because I like people like you two who like think outside the box, not the traditional, you know what I mean? And I think like this day and age, you know what I mean, with the way the world is and stuff, I think you kind of have to do that. I think the traditional classic old ways are always going to be around. That's cool. But I think it's cool personally when you have creators who approach things a little bit differently. Kind of like Tyler, for example. You're a novelist, but it's manga, right?
Well, it's just like manga style illustrations.
Yeah, but the story itself is it's set in the East, so it's Eastern, so
it's got the tropes and things that you
right, and so that's kind of, would you say, like rare in the novelist community?
I would assume. I don't think too many people watch anime and manga and are like, hey, I should write a novel.
right, and so that's your example in BA, because you're a novelist, but you have like what do you call, like a mini comic? Is there a comic with it too? So why don't you explain that? Explain what you were like, because also the other thing before the show's over, I've got your Indiegogo campaign up here, and so we'll kind of go over that, and you can explain all that good stuff, the story and everything. But just kind of give us the rundown of the novel and the comic stuff together.
Yeah, so essentially, I wrote these novels. I started them, I was almost 8 years ago now, back in 2017-ish, and it took me about 5 years to write both of them because I did two just back to back. And I released the first novel on Amazon in, I want to say like 2019, just with more, let's say, standard cover. Didn't really go out all out or anything. It did okay on Amazon, but it just like the cover wasn't really clicking with me. You know, I didn't feel like I was fully squeezing the orange per se, and so I was like,
Right, right.
okay, I'm gonna just search the web, try to find someone that just where I think they could capture the characters a little bit more. You know, the visualization that I had in my mind that I just didn't do a good enough job, right, finding the artist the first time. And so I stumbled on Twitter on just a couple different indie comic artists, and as I followed some of them, they shared more people's work, and then came across Corey Barton, who did most of the art for my novels and the mini comic, and just the art was like, whoa, you know, that's like the grittiness, the detail, the colors that I just can see my characters in. And once he did the first wraparound cover for the first novel, I was just hooked on the process and just seeing those characters come to life.
Right.
But I wasn't ready to go full blown like first comic issue.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's expensive to make a comic, and if you don't have much reach or much of a following, right, the likelihood that you're gonna have a killer crowdfunding campaign is extremely low. So I'm like, well, I got the novels done. A lot of people were really enjoying the art that I was sharing to Corey. So I'm like, you know, let's just do something different and do kind of a companion mini comic that introduces all the characters. Like, hey, here's what every single character looks like in the book, all the major and like main supporting characters, and then here's some of the key scenes, and then have them laid out kind of like baseball cards almost. Like here's the statistics and the key information about them. So, you know, if someone puts the book down for a week or two, they can go to that mini comic and be like, oh, yep, that's what they look like. Here's some of the information that was already shared, and they can kind of play it out like a film in their mind. Because the hardest part about reading a novel is not just piecing together the visualization in your mind, it's remembering it. And so when you actually see it though firsthand, then it's like you can memorize the way those characters look and just focus on the story and the context. And
Pictures with
maybe
1,000
it's
words.
right, maybe it's my ADHD where it's like I have a really hard time focusing when I read things, but maybe I overanalyze things. But having even some novels where they'll at least do a cover where there's a few characters where you can really picture them, it just helps you focus on the story more. So that was kind of my thinking, and it just kind of also get some experience getting commission art and getting to know people in the space in case I got to the point where I wanted to do or felt comfortable doing the first comic. So it's kind of like a warm up in a way, but also just a way to try to entice novel readers a little bit more as well. So
Yeah. Cool. And again, you bring up, and I've talked to Tyler about this with his novel, because we'll get to you in like 10 seconds, dude. The illustrate, to me, again, I'm mostly an artist. I'm a writer too, and whatever the fuck else. But it's like I've been an artist since I could hold a fucking crayon. You know what I mean? And novels usually, at least the way they used to be, was just the cover, you know, and the cover of a novel had to be fucking amazing. You know? And they usually are, you know, it's like several characters, all sorts of cool shit. And you're like, oh, wow, cool. But then that's it. You know what I mean? 300, 400, 500, 600 pages, and there's nothing. And years ago, there was a book called The Sword of Shannara. I don't know if any of you guys have you heard of Sword of Shannara?
I haven't read it, but I remember seeing it. Yeah.
It's like old, like I think it may have been 70s or 80s. But anyways, it like every maybe 20, 30 pages, it had a black and white illustration. But it was a painting. I don't know if you ever heard of the Hildebrandt brothers, but Greg, what was the other guy's name? I forget. The two Hildebrandt brothers, they were twin brothers, and they were famous artists back again in the 70s and 80s and stuff for fantasy. They painted fantasy. In fact, the Hildebrandt brothers painted the original Star Wars poster, the one with Luke holding the sword above his head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you see in the corner, it says Hildebrandt.
Mm-hmm.
And they illustrated the Sword of Shannara. And so they're paintings, but they were black and white. I just thought as a kid, because I was real little, like by the time I came across the book, it was so cool to see the characters in the book every so often, because like you said, with novel, you know, it's all words. And like a character that I would design, it would take a fucking page or two to describe the detail, you know. And like Tyler, you would probably agree, because Tyler kind of when he reviewed my book, he said, what was it? I have more like shit on my characters than he's ever like.
I don't remember the exact words, but yeah.
I wish I had that review. That was the best review. But anyways,
you can just look through comment or our messages on X.
Yeah, I'll have to someday. But anyways, a character can be very complex, you know, from detailed armor to the weapon to the hair to the braids to the fucking scars. You know what I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So describe that in a page. That's one character. What if you have 20 characters in the novel, 30 characters in the novel? You know, so much text to describe a character, where one fucking picture, man, is done. Boom. Mm-hmm. Now everyone knows what this fucker looks like. You know, you never have to. You basically don't have to describe him again. You know, and that's what I think's cool about having novels that have not just the cover illustration, but interior illustrations as well. Mm-hmm. And it's not the norm. You know what I mean, right? I mean, I'm not a novelist. Would that be kind of true, or kind of rare to have novels that have illustrations in them?
It's pretty rare from what I've seen. I mean, maybe, I don't know, 5% or even less do it.
It seems like there's like a stigma to having illustrations. It's like, oh, you have artwork? Oh, so you write for children.
Oh, really?
Only a child would want to see an image.
Weird.
An adult only wants to see words.
Condescending fuckers.
But those same people will then say, but by the way, we are releasing a 20-year edition of our book, and it's fully illustrated. Buy it too.
So they're hypocrites along with condescending.
Yeah, so
that's great.
So you can buy the original, say, Harry Potter books, and they're just full of words. Yeah. And then they have like these massive, like almost like I guess they're like 20-inch books. They're huge books. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of artwork through them.
Yeah.
And so buy the same book again, but with drawings, and
Gotcha.
The publisher gets to double their money.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So Tyler, so your turn. So again, I can show the evidence of your rough book. So B.A. Tyler a while ago mailed me his. This is his, like, what would you call it? The first edition rough copy.
That's just a physical manuscript. It's unpublished.
Okay. Physical. See, all this terminology, like what everyone, like comic terminology. I'm still trying to learn shit. You know what I mean? Like the perfect example was splash page, right? I always called it full page because it's fucking full page. But now the term is splash page. You know, in the industry, it's okay. So now I call it splash page. It's like one of 100 terms. I mean, there's all this fucking terminology. And I just fucking draw, man. You know what I mean? And it's like, whatever. And this with novels, I am not in that community at all. And so I would imagine there's technical terms for your first draft and your second draft and your published work and the republished work and all this shit. But anyway, so this is his rough copy. But and he'll have a cool cover. Again, this is his rough. He actually has an artwork cover. But check this out, BA. So he's got. Okay, so not only does he have an illustrative diagram, because remember, this is Eastern. So he is thought ahead, and for people who aren't familiar with the Eastern, especially weapons, he has, check out this chart, this weapon chart. See, so he's got everything explained, katana and ninja, all that cool stuff, and then maps and stuff. And I just think it's cool on his behalf that he's got illustrations every.
That weapon chart. That weapon chart came from the fact that I let a beta reader read through the book.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you're an author, you dive into whatever it is you're trying to write, especially if it's some type of history thing. If it's like historical fiction, then you really got to dive into whatever your time period is and just kind of become like a mini expert in that thing.
Right.
Unfortunately, that means in your mind, that stuff's just common knowledge.
Yeah.
Because you've just dived headfirst into it for the last 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And then you encounter a normal person and they don't know a fraction of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I let this beta reader read that first book, and she was very confused because it kept talking about different weapons. And I'm just saying the name, and I'm like, oh, well, they picked up this weapon.
Yeah.
And she has no idea what that weapon looks like. So I was like, maybe I should pay an artist to draw out a little diagram for me. So
that's cool.
And I mentioned it to her, and she said, yes, that would have been so helpful. I was like, simple.
And again, you know, when you like, I don't know, like, you know, example, like when you talk about the complicated novels, like, you know, like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you know what I mean? Or the Harry Potters and all this stuff. You know, I mean, there are objects, creatures, there's all sorts of stuff in there that the, you know, normal person, common person, they have no clue about, you know, like even like types of armor or a type of helmet or a shield or a weapon or whatever. And then, yeah, when you're dealing with all these different, you know, like realms, like BA, I was looking over your campaign before the show, and I mean, yeah, you have a lot of artwork in there, but again, it's your setting, you know what I mean? And so there's probably things in your setting that, again, an average normal person has no clue about. So it's cool that you have illustrations to show it, as opposed to dedicating a page or description or whatever. It's just, again, I think it's cool that you both have illustrations in your novels, even though they're actually novels, you know, because, okay, that's the next thing. So Tyler, yours is like nuts. You have 10 books coming, right? Nine or 10? 10. And they range from, what's the biggest to the smallest?
You've got the biggest.
This is okay, cool.
That's the thickest book. It's like about 109,000 words.
Yeah.
But the thinnest ones, it's not even like 3 of the 10. There's 10 books.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I'll eventually market it is 10 books.
Right.
7 novels, 3 novellas, 1 story.
Nice. That's cool.
But
and
yes, I was just gonna say there's word count limits for what defines a novel. Mm-hmm. And so 3 of them.
Which is what for people like.
It's got to be at least 60,000 words.
60,000 words.
If it's at least 60,000
to be a novel,
words, it's considered a novel. And then below that, you have novella and what's the other one?
Short stories. I don't know. It's like some people, they'll call certain books short stories, but they're almost like the same as a novel, or a novella. But I don't know.
You got the novella. The novella is from 20,000 to 40,000.
Okay.
And then there's one below that. I can't remember what it's called, but it starts with an N. And then there's one even below that. They just call it flash fiction, which is like 5,000 words.
Wow.
Usually flash fiction is like more like a freak scenario kind of thing. So like the entire story is like, it might be a woman walks into a store and finds a man attractive, and the whole story is just her anxiety around the man, and then eventually she gets his number and leaves, and that's the end of the story. Mm-hmm. Or maybe a guy walks into a bank and a dude jumps, or knocks him over, and he's like, "Give me all the money." And the 5,000 words are just this guy's traumatic experience in a bank heist, how he survived. Just tiny. They're like, instead of a story, it's just a scene.
Almost a scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
So B.A., what's the like? How long are your books?
Both. I think book 1 was. I think both of them were around 90,000 words. Okay. I originally wrote it as one huge book. It was like 180, 200,000 words. But again, the more I thought about it, right, it's harder to sell a huge book, especially if it's your first book out the gate.
Right.
And, just thinking I'm like, makes sense to split them up and then try to sell them together, ideally. Yeah. And then I'm like, I can also offer both as one, which is what I did, a duology version. So, and then, when I do a comic, right, it'll be 48 pages. It's a huge change up. So, yeah.
So okay, so you have the 2 novels in your campaign. Okay,
Yep.
now wait, is one of those the first novel you'd made, like in 2019?
Yep.
And that's called like Blood and, what is that called?
Of Blood and Stone. Yep.
Of Blood and Stone. And Vigilantes Creed is the comic?
No, Vigilantes Creed is the series.
Oh, the series.
And
Okay.
Yep. So that's what I labeled the mini comic, for the title at least. But yeah,
Okay.
there's book 1, which is a Blood and Stone, and book 2, which is Mortal Defiance. And then when I have a book 3, again, it'll just kind of have a series name to it. That way, right, it kind of helps, in my opinion, when you're trying to market, let's say on Amazon, for example.
Right.
If they see the same series name on all the books, maybe they're more likely to pick up a couple, versus if it's like a complete standalone name, but it's connected to other books. If they don't read the description throughout the page, they may not pick up that, hey, there's all these other books, right? Because it's not like on a crowdfunding campaign, you can just put all of them on there, but Amazon, right? You can't like really bundle them and all that real well. So,
okay. So, and then, okay, now are you working on because you said the 3rd novel, but you're also working on a comic, right?
yeah, the 3rd novel, I've just done brainstorming, essentially some character designs.
Okay.
Nothing
So
too
it's in
much
the
on
works.
that.
It's like in the works. Okay.
Yeah. But I can't do a comic and a novel at the same time. Like my
Right.
brain has to do just one. So right now I'm full tilt on the comic issue. Once that script is done and it's more just working with the artist on the artwork, then I'll move over to novels, because it's such a different mindset and approach that I'm like, I can't do 2 different things at once. So at some point this year I'll go into novel mode again, and I'll probably end up just going back and forth between the 2 for a long time. So
not to mention the time consuming, right?
You
know, I mean, did anyone, dude, I sure as hell didn't think, I mean, this is like my stuff. It's a way of life. It's not a job, profession. It's fucking lifestyle, dude. It's day and night, 7 goddamn days. I mean, it's like, I get burned out, and like just the other day, I was like, you know what? I ain't fucking touching nothing. I don't want to deal with this. It's like took one day off, son of a bitch. The next day, I'm just like, that drawing I'm working on. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like you can't give it up, and I guess that's a good thing. You have to have. It's like anyone who's thinking about writing a novel or a comic, whatever. It's like, man, you better love your story. Because if you're half into it, it ain't gonna work. Yeah, you're gonna get burnt out. Because I mean, I know I get burnt out working on my shit. I mean, I'm sure you have, right? Tyler, yes, no, maybe.
Well, I kind of just made it my life.
Yeah. I mean, you do. You just
last like 5 years. It's just been life.
Yeah.
I
it does.
I would literally I would go to work. Like, people say I'm a writer, and what they really mean is they're a typer. They type on their laptop and they tell their story that way.
Yeah.
But actually, I can say that I'm a writer because a good chunk of all of my books is actually written in notebooks.
That's cool. So old school.
Yeah, I literally took notebooks to work, and cool. at my job, I have a lot of downtime, and so I would just be writing out even dialogue. Like,
that's cool.
While I'm at work, and I would literally spend effectively, not consecutively, but effectively 10 hours a day. I was just like writing out the story and writing out the like even dialogue. And then as soon as I would get home, I'd be like, all right, let's keep going. And I would then open up my laptop and then transfer what I had scribbled down on paper onto the computer. And then there was even things where it was like, literally when I started this, I didn't have a touchscreen phone. I didn't have internet on my phone. Damn. So I was, I'm just dated, but so I would have questions and things. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what was that this way? Was that? And I would actually write down like questions or things like I need to search this when I get home. And as soon as I
Right.
get home, I would start doing research about this weapon, this war, this person, stuff
Yeah.
like that. And so there was a really heavy duty time where it was just all day, every day, just the story.
Yeah. And BA, I mean, you're not, you can probably relate, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, the 5 years I was writing those, I mean, I did something similar. I mean, I had like a desk job, right? So I couldn't
Right.
like real easily like pull up a Word document and type out prose because
Right.
I worked in spreadsheets and shit. So
You're
I
kind
would
of
have
hiding it under the work stuff,
Mhm.
weren't you? I did the same thing.
Yep. But I'd always have a notebook and like
Yeah.
something would pop into my mind because I always listen to music throughout work and
Right.
something would pop in my mind. I'd just grab that notebook and I'd write a chapter,
Yeah.
just
That's
kind of
cool.
looking over my shoulder and just you'd write out a chapter or just,
Yeah.
do some, jogging some notes. But yeah, I probably wrote 25% of it on paper, did the same thing.
Yeah.
Would just have a chapter or an idea come to mind, write it out, and then you go home and I would just go to like Starbucks after work for
Mhm.
like I'd work 8 hours and then I'd go to Starbucks for like 6 hours until midnight when they would close and just
Wow.
rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, now it's different, I have a kid and stuff, but
Mm.
yeah, I mean, that's all I thought about nonstop, right? It was just
Yeah.
the story and it was a blast.
It's like an obsession, and I know like normally obsessions are seen as bad, but I think when it comes to creative works, creative projects, I think obsession, that's where it can be a good thing,
Mhm.
because again, if you're not, oh, it's cool, oh, it's fun, man, no, it's like it's almost got to be, because I mean, you guys know all you're putting kind of part of your like fucking soul in this shit. You know what I mean? It's personal. It's like I don't know anyone that has done a book or comic or I'm sure film or God knows poetry, whatever, man. That doesn't like have like there in their work. You know what I mean? And that's the downside in this day and age of social media is when you got people that rip on you, trash your shit, whatever. You're just like, fuck. It's like how can you not take it personally? Because we are literally kind of exposing ourselves to the fucking world, saying, "What do you think?" And someone's like, "You suck. You are suck." Whatever. We all know about this shit, and you're just like, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? And so, but that's just how it is these days, and so just know that's you're probably going to encounter that situation sometime. If you're lucky, you won't. Fortunately, I haven't encountered it much, thank God, because it would really fucking piss me off. But it's like everyone knows it's out there. We all see it. You know what I mean? And that's the unfortunate side. But it's just like you just I guess you just ignore them and keep going, right? I mean,
yep. Yeah, I mean, it's especially prevalent in comics, indie comics, right? It can be brutal, but even in novels, I mean, that'll happen too.
Yeah.
People make judgments. I mean, I came across it where someone was very vocal because, like, I'm a fan of Zack Snyder films, right? And they assumed my books were going to be like carbon copy, so they just started like going on Twitter rants about how it's an anti-hero and this. I'm like, did you read it? Well, no, but just look at the art. You're telling me what my character is and his actions based on the fact that he looks like an image character.
Look, man,
they're judging a book by a cover, dude. It's the classic fucking case.
I get that you wrote the story, but I've seen the cover art. I think I know it better than you.
They're judging a book by its cover. I mean, dude, it's an age-old fucking thing. Never judge a book by its cover. What do they fucking do on social media? They judge a book by its cover. It's just like, Jesus Christ, who are we fucking dealing with here? You know what I mean? It's I would love to know who the fuck these people are. You probably wouldn't, because it'd be depressing and horrible. But it's just like, who does that? You know what I mean? It's just like you're like giving your opinion on something you don't have a fucking clue about. You know what I mean? It's just like, How does a mind work that way? I don't understand it, but whatever. That's just me. So indie comics, yep, that's tricky community. But the novel community, like obviously I don't have a fucking clue about the novel community, but I think Tyler mentioned something one time about it. So why don't you two talk about how the independent novel community is? Because I don't think a lot of people know how the independent novel community is.
Well, with indie novels, I mean, it's well, with comics, it's like, oh, you wrote a comic, so you're in the club. Now most comics tend to be like superheroes, but ultimately it's like, you're an indie comic, we're going to support you. With novels, there's seems to be much more focus on the genres. So if you're like a fantasy author, well, then all the fantasy authors are going to talk about you and try to share you around and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're like into romance and YA novels, then talking about some fantasy guy is not going to be really their thing. Or if you're into like sci-fi, futuristic spaceships and aliens and battles and stuff,
right?
That's not a book to bring up at like the Twilight Club,
right?
And everybody's doing that sort of thing. So that's an element. But even more so is, it doesn't matter what your genre is, you've got to pull, at least the way it's been for several years, you've got to pull the leftist woke talking points, basically. It doesn't matter what your story is about. If you don't play ball, they don't let you in the game, so to speak.
Is that BA? Have you seen that?
Well, if you want to try to get traditionally published, yeah. Like I originally, did do a round of submissions to literary agents, which are middlemen, right?
Right.
And some of the times I couldn't even submit because their requirements were you had to have X, Y, and Z types of characters, right? Whether diversity, sexuality, or you yourself had to be like a minority. Like literally, there were literary agents that said, right now, we're not accepting, submissions by like non-persons of color. Like absolute like discrimination, right?
Jesus.
Right. It should just, no one should even care about any of that stuff when your submission should be based off of the quality of the book, of course.
Right.
And it was bad. I mean, across the board, there were very few that just had traditional like submission requirements. And so eventually you're just like, yeah, these folks are not interested in books, right? They're interested in types of characters and types of people based on their own, right?
The agenda, like the woke agenda.
Yep. It's all their own agenda. And the whole like writing community or whatever, let's say on Twitter and Facebook, it's very similar, right? Indie comics, it's got a very, I want to say, healthy balance of, let's say, conservative folks, liberal folks, or just non-political, right, folks, where they just
like neutral. I'd say neutral. Yeah.
Right. They don't bring politics into discussions or into their comics, right?
Yeah.
Whereas novels, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of people that are just they're focused on those check boxes. And the one thing too, like Tyler was saying about genres, what's even more difficult, what I've seen is a lot of like indie comic creators, they want to help one another. A lot of them, they have streams like this where they'll showcase other people's work. They want to network and help each other grow, right? Not so much in the novel space. There's booktubers, but a lot of them, they want free books. Hey, you give me a free book, I might do a review. I might bring you on my show.
Wow.
So they are essentially like, they'll collect all these books, right? And then they'll just so happen a couple of years down the road to release their own book, and then everyone wants to buy their book because they're a booktube. But there's just not many people doing streams, trying to help each other get sales, I think they see each other as competition too much.
Yeah.
Even though they're releasing 1 or 2 novels a year, which people that read novels will read maybe one a week or at least one a
Right.
month. And so with how oversaturated like Amazon is with authors, it almost feels territorial. To where I feel like a lot of indie novelists just don't want to. They don't want to retweet people's works. They don't want to help promote others. Like they're just focused on themselves. And so you see a lot of people come in with a lot of eagerness, and then they do that first book, and then they disappear. I mean, we see it in indie comics too, but
Yeah.
it's usually because they can't raise enough money.
Right.
Where with indie novels, unless you're doing illustrations, maybe you'll end up paying 1,000 or 2,000 for covers and marketing and write an editor, but it's not like 5,000 or
Right.
as bad as it can be for comics.
Mm.
But again, they get such little royalties from Amazon because they get such a big chunk of it that a lot of them, right, unless they're really passionate to where they're like, hey, I just want to tell my story, even if I lose some money every year.
Right.
A lot of them, they go in thinking they're going to make some money, and then they realize, holy crap, there's a million authors on here. Amazon does not push anyone's book unless it's all based on sales or who's paying for ads. And so it's a strange environment. It's not
And
as
there's
volatile as comics, but it's different. Yeah.
So there's our next talking point, which I was going to mention is Amazon, because I have the only fucking experience I have with Amazon is ordering shit. You know what I mean? I don't know how Amazon works when it comes to novels or anything like that, because, as we know, indie comics it's the crowdfunding. It's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Fund My Comic, and others like Global Comics, for digital. There's all sorts of shit. But I am not aware of anyone who is like selling their comic on Amazon. I mean, I'm sure there are, right? I mean,
well, I don't think Amazon prints comics.
They're just novels.
I think so.
Yeah. So let's talk about that YouTube, because again, I don't know about it. I'm sure there's people watching that don't have a clue about how the whole Amazon, like how does Amazon work with you when it comes to your novels?
Well, I mean, the thing about it is like right now, you could literally open up a Word document and just start randomly hammering down on the keys and get about 2 or 3 pages worth, or I guess, get 10 pages at least.
Yeah.
And then just upload it to Amazon, and you can publish that as a book. You can go into the document, and you just basically like you create an account like you would like a social media kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you give it a name, all the little details about the book. The website is called KDP Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And you put it on there. Amazon is a place to sell, but it's also sort of like a social media kind of thing in terms of, or like YouTube. You're creating your content, so to speak. And so you create the content, the book, but it's effectively for free. Like you don't have to pay anything. There's even they've got a feature on there where you can just make your own cover, like right there on the spot. It won't be good, but you can do it. Yeah. And you can just sell your book that way. And Amazon will pay for the manufacturing of the book, and they'll only make it's print on demand. So I could publish a book right now, but that book won't physically exist until you place the order to buy it.
Weird.
So it exists like on a computer. And then when you place the order, Amazon's like, oh, there's an order, time to print. And then they'll print that one copy and send it out.
So they print per order. They don't print 50 books. Wow, interesting. Huh,
So in the olden days, there were these things called vanity presses.
okay, I've
And
heard of that.
with the vanity press, these were kind of like I wouldn't say they're necessarily scammers,
Mm-hmm.
but they're companies that have printing presses, and they say, "Hey, you're an author. Would you like to have your book printed, or would you like to print a book?"
Mm-hmm.
And a person might say, "Wow, I could have a book printed. Like I would be successful. I would have this
Right.
book in my hand. That makes me a
Right.
successful person." And they're like, "Yeah, it does. All you gotta do is give us the money."
Hmm.
And then you would pay the vanity press to print your book, and they would expect you to print a certain number. So it might be 500 copies.
Okay.
And so that 500 copy, order also means a certain amount of money that you have to pay them. So it might be, I'm just throwing a number, $3,000. I don't know.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
So you give them $3,000. They give you 500 books, and then they call it a day. All right. Thanks for your business. And then you're now stuck with 500 books
Gotcha.
that are taking up all this space and all these boxes.
Mm.
And you have to now go out and try to sell them. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, that's cool. You can just have some really cool looking boxes sitting in the
Right.
corner, hundreds and hundreds of books that you're never going to sell.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, back in those days, there was also the element of, let's say you do this scenario, and so maybe that $3,000 is a lot of money. You print out all
Mm-hmm.
these books, cool, and you finally are holding your book and you open it up, and wouldn't you know it, there's a lot of mistakes in that book, and you paid for all
Wow.
those copies, and so
And no refunds.
yeah. So now you not only have 500 copies of this book,
Damn.
they're full of issues. So are you going to sell crappy, flawed books, or are you going
Damn.
to make the edits and then pay them $3,000 more for 500 more copies?
Jesus.
Let's go with option B and get 500 more copies. So now we got 1,000 books sitting in the corner, and oops, turns out you didn't get all the mistakes. There's more mistakes in there.
That's crazy.
So in modern day, it's a lot easier because you can just keep looking through the document. You keep making edits. Like I sent you that manuscript.
Right.
I was able to print that one book, and I can flip through it. I can find issues, and then I can fix them. And I can print another one book, and I can look through it. And every time I print that one book, it's like $4.
Okay.
So it's
affordable. Is that BA? Is this familiar to you? Have you done anything like this?
Yeah, I mean that's how I did the initial book on Amazon. It's like a blessing and a curse because it's super convenient. Because I mean, it's a blessing because it gives indie authors an avenue, right? Because the mainstream, right, these literary agents, they've essentially closed the door 97% of the way there, and the other 3% is just for people that meet those criteria, right? So for everybody else, they're essentially screwed, right? Which is really bad. So it's great that Amazon provides that avenue. And yeah, you can just get a proof copy or personal sale copy super cheap. That's super convenient. But the problem that it's caused is that, in my opinion, the indies are almost pricing themselves out of making a profit because there's thousands and thousands of authors on Amazon, and many of them are so desperate for sales that they're basically selling them and making no royalty, right?
Oh.
So it's really hard. Like, let's say you're a first-time author and you want to put your book up there for $15, which isn't unreasonable. It's cheaper than most of the books in the store. You're maybe going to make a $3-4 margin, right? Which is not much,
right?
Depending on how thick the book is.
True, and the size and format, yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of people will be like, "Oh, they've never done a book before. I won't pay that much." When all these other first-time authors, they're charging $5. Hell, a lot of them are giving their book away for free, like the digital version.
Yeah.
So you have all these authors that are like, oh, 99 cents, oh, free. So there's people that will just start collecting these free books and
Ugh.
saving money. The other aspect of it too is, let's say, like mine, they're a custom size, custom format, have, very particular, um, like lamination type. If I
Mhm.
wanted to print with my current printer, sell them on Amazon, well, people wouldn't get prime shipping. And so you have the pricing dilemma, but then people are so accustomed to free prime shipping that they see anything that's more than like $10 for the total
Mhm.
cost. They're like, unless it's a Stephen King or someone with a
Right.
big name, they're not going to buy it. And so
Wow.
you see a lot of people basically trying to become competitive by charging next to nothing for the
Next to
book.
nothing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's created a really strange environment. And then the other problem too, and I've seen this with Barnes and Noble as well. I did a test print with them where
Hmm.
sometimes you get books where the text is all slanted, or
Uh,
the covers are trimmed like crookedly. I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I one of the conventions I did years ago, I had them print like 250 books. All of them were slanted. It was like,
Dude.
oh, now Amazon's pretty good with, getting them shipped back and getting a refund.
Okay, that's
I
cool.
don't know about, Barnes and Noble and stuff, but it's like,
Mhm.
the average reader would be like, oh, it's Amazon's fault, which is good.
Right.
When you have the crowdfunding mindset and you're like, hey, this book has to be perfect, right? People are paying a premium. It kind of makes me nervous using Amazon because it's like they
Yeah.
just throw it in a baggie, it gets tossed around, people get it with like a bent cover, and I'm just like,
Mm.
It
like,
Yeah.
wasn't me.
Yeah.
yeah. So, but then you'll get like, I don't know, your wife will order like nail polish and they'll put it in like this big sturdy box, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Like
why
it's
can't you
gold
do this with a
bar.
book? Right.
Like they're shipping gold bars. Yeah.
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 So, but yeah, it's a blessing, but again, it's also, I don't know, created it in a way. It's spoiled, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but it's
Mhm.
almost spoiled the novel reading community to the point where they expect free shipping, they expect
Oh
really
yeah.
cheap books,
Yeah.
and they won't go outside of Amazon. Like they won't. A lot of people won't buy crowdfunding books,
Wow.
or they may not go to Barnes and Noble and buy physical books because they're just so used to perusing Amazon and getting books so
Mm.
cheap. But if it's indie authors, it's like they don't realize, like, hey, if they sell their book for $10, they may make $1.
Yeah.
And if they have $1,000 in cost to make that book,
Right.
how many people are going to get 1,000 book sales? Very,
Yeah.
very few.
Yeah.
And
Dang.
so it's interesting.
I can
So
tell you
go ahead.
little bit of a view from like the musical world. Okay,
Oh
so
wow, that's right.
same issue with music because of the internet
Right.
is why we have all of these self-indie published books. Same concept in the music world. With music on the internet, like you can just upload your music to all these different streaming
Right.
platforms or to just YouTube or wherever. This gave everybody a megaphone to say, hey, I'm over here, buy my music.
Right.
Problem is, everybody in the crowd has a megaphone.
Yeah.
So now you can't be heard.
Right.
At first, it's like, you're giving me a megaphone? Now everybody can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize you're in a crowd of 50,000 people. Every one of them's got the megaphone.
Yeah.
So with everybody putting their music on the internet, back in the day, you would have to go to a specific like MTV channel to see a music video.
Mm-hmm.
But when YouTube started getting popular, bands were able to put music videos on there and they were good. It was for free. They could just
Yeah.
put their music video on and stream. And there's been several bands and artists, individual artists like hip hop and whatever, where they don't even release albums anymore. The album is effectively dead. They just release singles, and specifically a single with a music video on YouTube. If you release a single and there's no music video, you've just broken your legs out from under you. You've got to have a music video.
Wow.
Because people, you can't expect someone to just sit and listen to music for 4 minutes. Who's got an attention span for that? They've got to
Jeez.
see something too.
Yeah.
And so with everybody streaming their music, it's the same thing that Turner said. People were trying, like, oh, buy my new, album or whatever. And it's like,
Wow.
who the fuck are you, dude? I don't know your
Wow.
band. I'm not paying for that. So people started giving their music away for cheaper and cheaper until it became free.
Yeah.
And one time I went to a party and everybody was having fun and drinking and stuff. And that was when I was in the band. And this girl was like, hey, your band just released a new album, right? And I was like, yeah. She was like, how much is it? And I was like, it's for free. Just go to bandcamp.com and download it.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? Nah, yeah, I would feel bad downloading your music for free. Like, you should get something for it. Didn't you pay money for studio? I'm like, oh, yeah, I spent thousands of dollars. And they're like, well, no way. I'm not going to get that for free. And I was like, all right. Or she was like, why would you give it away for free? And I was like, all right, well, let me ask you this. I said, what is your favorite band? Your favorite band? And she said, well, probably Chelsea Grin. It was a heavy deathcore kind of band. She said, probably Chelsea Grin. I was like, oh, yeah, Chelsea Grin. They're pretty cool. I was like, I see you got their shirt. Did you buy that? And she's like, oh, yeah, I bought this. I was like, so you like their music, though, right? And she's like, oh, yeah. I was like, how many of their albums have you bought? And she just, oh.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's your favorite band, remember?
Right.
Your favorite band. And you haven't given them a dime for their music. So if you won't buy the music of your favorite band, why would you buy my band's music? Some random local band.
Yeah.
I was like,
wow.
Music industry has become the clothing industry. You give your music away for free, and if people like your music, they'll buy your merch.
Wow. I mean, everything's changed. Like it sounds like all industries have changed. I mean, because you got the top is film, Hollywood, all that shit. And then probably television, then amazingly video games. Video games is a fucking huge industry. It's like $1 billion. And then, probably, I don't know. I guess I would imagine novels is probably slightly bigger than comics, would you say, or vice versa?
What do you mean, like in profits?
Just, profits, numbers, all that.
I don't know anymore, honestly. I mean, both I think are declining in general.
Yeah.
I mean, manga's obviously, the one that's growing here in the West, but I mean, I don't know.
I'll look at it. I'll do a little research later because I'm wondering because it is different as obviously you guys have explained the novel community is.
One thing I would say is you hear about comic shops closing down across the country, but I haven't heard about libraries closing down.
True. Yeah.
So
a lot of them are government funded though.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But bookstore wise, right? It's just Barnes and Noble. There's not many mom and pop, but just like music stores, right? There's not many.
Yeah.
Right.
Many of those left, unfortunately, but
no more.
In the 90s, that happened with comics, dude. I mean, I remember is when I was younger, the comic stores just one after another. Just it was like fucking it was weird because as a little kid, I had like a little account at this comic book store downtown, and the owner always any number one issue of anything he put in the folder for me. So like my dad and I would go there and buy and stuff. And then when a few years later, when comics book shops started to shut down, it was really fucking weird. And again, I think they almost would have like gone out forever. But then what happened was basically the 90s, the internet, and it all changed. And basically the whole McFarlane, all of that, Dark Horse, Image, just fucking revamped. It was like a renaissance, it just like all this new age comics came where it's dark and gritty and adult and fucking violence and nudity and sex and all that fucking great shit. You know what I mean? And that basically I saved the industry because I remember it was dying. I mean, it was like about to become extinct until the internet in the 90s came. And then it was just like, boom. And here we are what year is this? 30 years later, you know what I
25.
mean? We're still going. So,
Well, one thing about the novels is the people who buy novels are people who want to read novels, and that's pretty much the end of the story there.
yeah,
When it comes to comics, that taps into 3 different industries. There's people who want to read the story of a comic.
right,
But then you've got other people who just appreciate the art. They're like, wow, that's such a cool looking image. That's such a cool looking character.
right,
And that
right,
draws them in. And then you got the speculative investors who are buying them because they think that they can turn around and resell them. You don't have people loading up on the first book of Twilight or the first book of Harry Potter because they're like, yo, the issue 1 is going to be worth so much one day. I'm going to turn around and sell this thing.
right.
That's not a thing. But for comics, you can be like, oh, a new Spider-Man series, issue 1, better get it. And then 3 months later, oh, it's been canceled, and there's a new issue 1 for a new series. Better get that one.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too that the comic industry is very fortunate for is movies, right?
Yeah.
It's the movies and the legacy characters that keep the big 2 afloat, essentially. If they didn't have the films, I think it would be way, way worse.
A lot different. It'd be a lot different.
Where with novels, it's like, yeah, you get novels that get turned into films, but it's not really like publishing houses, right? That are no one knows who's publishing said book that becomes a novel. Half the time, people don't even realize unless they see something, where they actually say based on a novel, but then they're like, I just saw the movie, right? But for comics, right, it's a bit different. And I mean, there's been comic book movies for so long now, but that's on the decline now. So that's what's going to be interesting.
Is it?
I mean, they're turning lower and lower numbers.
Really?
Since after like Avengers Endgame and after the first Aquaman, like the DC films have all tanked with the exception of the Batman or whatever.
Right.
A lot of them are losing money. The Marvel ones, they're just in COVID. Obviously, didn't help that shit either. But they're just people aren't as excited about the movies.
Now, is this also partially to blame the whole woke agenda shit? Because I know it's everywhere.
It's part of it, but it's also just the same issue with the mainstream comics where they're not really focusing on big hits, right? They're not focusing like on a huge Silvestri book or a Frank Miller book that can really, really bring attention. Just like for the films, they're not focusing on like, let's say, like what they did with the Snyderverse, right? They brought in Ben Affleck.
Right.
They brought in some big names to really bring attention to it. And then now it's like you don't even know who the Superman actor is, right? You don't even know like the cast. You're just kind of like people are gonna watch it because it's Superman, but there's I don't know, and plus it's been Superman films have been done so many times now. Batman films have been done so many times that it's not that fresh. And so but I also think quality is an issue. I mean, they're like the CGI now is worse than a lot of the films 10 years ago, which is inexcusable, right?
It doesn't make sense at all.
So yeah, it's just like, but yeah, you see it with mainstream comics where some of the books you just look at and you're like, look at the art or how look at the story and you're just like, what the heck? Like it makes no sense that this is mainstream. It's like they're trying to push out quantity versus like, hey, let's make a killer series, hype it up, right? Like we have this big new series, like Absolute Batman. That was smart. The Absolute series can't really say much about quality because I haven't read them yet, but it brought hype to it. But then you have like a Harley Quinn book about farting, like no joke, and you're like,
I saw that. I'm like. I thought it was a joke. I'm like, oh, this is a parody. And it's like, no, it's fucking real. I'm like,
there's just so many books that are just like, it's like they're printing it just to say, like, oh yeah, we still release X amount of comics per month, and it's like, okay, it's not really helping you though.
It
would have been the past when you had, let's say 20 issues a month with a bunch of huge names tied to them. Then but now it's like. A lot of them are trying to save money. They're outsourcing a lot of the jobs to lower cost countries to names that people don't know. And it's like comics are like films. If you don't attach names to it that people recognize,
Yeah.
unless the art or something about it really stands out, people aren't even going to pick it up and look at it in the shop. You know?
Yeah. It's
I'd rather
weird.
buy an old Frank Miller book that I've already
Right.
read just to collect it than buy one of these new ones that just doesn't look that interesting.
And I mean, I'm that way with movies. I don't watch anything new anymore. I mean, the last time I was actually in a movie theater has been years. I don't give a shit what it is. I know it's going to probably suck. You know what I mean? And so I'm going back to movies from 10, 15, 20 years ago, just rewatching them, get the director's cut or the fucking gold edition. I'm kind of like reinvesting in the past, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I can see doing the same with comics. And the thing is there, it's like movies, but comics, dude, there are just, where do you start? I mean, dude, there's so many. People don't realize, you know what I mean? It's like you're dealing with like tens of thousands or hundreds of that. I mean, it's just nuts. You know what I mean? So many different types of stories and characters and genres and everything. And so I guess the silver lining would be if the modern day stuff is shit, well, then you got plenty of shit that's backlogged. You know what I mean? Man, go dig in stuff, whatever, 10 years ago. Like, for me, it seemed like the change was like roughly 10, 12 years ago when that shit hit everything. It started in fucking Hollywood. I saw it, man, in the fucking around 2010. I noticed movies were just predictable, and it almost like, what? They're kind of these little messages, it was just fucking off. Like, movies aren't the same as when they were. And then it just started to go down to television. And then fucking this. And then for me, the final straw was the role-playing, the Dungeons and Dragons shit. When I heard D&D went woke, I'm like, we're done. I'm like, they fucking won. I'm like, that's like the bottom tier, man. It's like card games and role-playing games, like tabletop role-playing games, that's kind of the bottom of entertainment. And if they've saturated everything, we're screwed. And so now, just recently, because of someone in office, it looks like this shit is turning the fuck around 180 degrees. I mean, they're like, this whole DEI shit, they're fucking killing, man. Boom, boom, boom. Like every day you're reading about this stuff. And so I think literally this is where, and I'm hoping it affects everything, man, from comics to film to television to blah, 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 everything, because it's like it all needs to be cleaned. You know what I mean? It's like you got to extract this fucking cancer that's in entertainment in general, because it seems like everything's been like ruined. You know what I mean? I mean, the Star Wars universe is the best example. That was horrible what happened, and but you see it in everything, right? The comics, I mean, everything. So I don't know. Thanks for listening to my rant.
Are you good?
Well, the other thing too is there haven't been any high rollers, let's say on the political scale, whether it's independent or conservative, right, that have done anything about this, right? No one has started up a Image 2.0 or some sort of independent, right, comic company that's like, hey, we're going to actually just let people submit based on merit. And, the old days, like there's so many influential people that have millions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But what are they doing with it, right? They're doing like Daily Wire type stuff. They're doing Timcast. It's like,
isn't it sort of what
the film studio,
Isn't it sort of what Rip is trying to do with his thing? Because he's got that submit thing. Rip, what was it? Something submit, or I can't remember what it's called.
Rip Ascend or
Send, yeah. That he's trying to start up like a kind of like a platform for other artists. Like, so people who have their own like comic, it's not associated with Rippa and his thing and ISOM and all that. It's just he's basically trying to start his Rippa Universe comic brand. So
I don't follow him, so I don't know. I'm kind of clueless. I'm clueless to a lot of shit that goes on.
What's his name? I think it's I might be wrong, but I think it's maybe Yellow Flash or some
Yellow
there's some
Flash, yeah.
YouTuber that recently started promoting a book that's supposed to be published under RIPA. And so it's
Yeah.
it's not a RIPA entity or an Eric July entity and associated with his characters, but it's being published on his platform or whatever. So it's like
Yeah.
Marvel or DC, they've got a lot of other stuff than just Batman and Spider-Man. So,
Right.
Yeah, the difference with that though, unlike obviously the big two or Dark Horse, is that you have to pay for the service. So it's kind of like the vanity press in a sense where like first you have to have the book like 100% done, which immediately blocks out most indie comic creators, right? Because you need crowdfunding to get that money first. I guess you could crowdfund and then submit, but then there's either they take a certain percent or there are some fees associated. So it's versus right if the big two pick you up or something, right, you end up just getting royalties or whatnot. But yeah, there's not a lot of details behind it. A lot of people don't know exactly like what the fees are or the percentages and stuff like that. But it might be an option for some folks. I don't know, but it seems like it's more garnered towards people with big audiences already versus I will be very surprised if he brings on any unknown people.
Talking about Eric.
What's that?
Are you talking about Eric bringing on people?
Yeah, for Ripasend, like I don't think many indies that don't have a following or anything will get accepted because obviously he needs the sales to get that percentage, right? That he charges.
He's still trying to build up his name.
Mhm.
So if he just if crappy independent creator becomes stamped onto his name, then it's going to hurt his brand. If he starts promoting these books that just aren't good, then certain people will use that against him.
Yeah, I hope there's another image or something someday. Just some big names that, again, they don't care about the politics. They just want to get back to publishing just great comics, right? And people can just submit like the old days, right? And get in shops and all of that. But yeah,
with indie comics, it's just like indie books, and I would assume even like indie films. And I don't know much in that world, but the thing is, a lot of people like indie stuff or creators like that avenue because they have the creative control. Anytime you have to answer to somebody else, you're not going to get 100% of what you want as a creator.
Right.
If you're wanting to publish a novel through a big, one of the big 5 publishing houses, they might not like a certain element of the story or whatever, and they're going to force you to change it. If you want to be a comic creator and you're like, man, it'd be great if I had this really awesome, certain character who says certain things, Marvel might be like, nope, that won't fly. Maybe in the 1970s, but not anymore. Can't do that. And the same with the movies, obviously, especially, if you want to make a certain film and you're like, it'd be really cool if I filmed it like guerrilla style with just a phone or whatever. Like, yeah, we're not going to tolerate that. When it's indie, you get the control, but that's the compromise because when you're indie, you also got to pay for it all, promote it all, and you've got to put in a lot of work, whether it's figuring out locations, it's script writing, it's editing, it's whatever your thing is, that's all on you.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's check out BA's current campaign. Now when let's see, when did you first launch your campaign? Like, is this your first one that's still going on? Because I mean, it's been what, a couple of years?
Yeah, this one I launched in July of 2023. So it's going to close probably in about 4 weeks. I'll close it out.
Wow.
So
okay.
But I had the book 90% done
Cool.
before the campaign ended. So I started shipping within like 2, 3 weeks. So I've basically
Cool.
just been shipping on demand. So someone places an order, I just ship
That's
it
cool.
within a day or two, which is it's really convenient to use crowdfunding sites as basically storefronts because
Storefronts. Yeah.
yeah, it's the same thing. It costs you nothing, right? They
Nothing.
take their percentage,
Yeah.
which is minimal compared to, like Amazon, but you just gotta make sure you have stock and stuff. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I've just been cruising and yeah, just every dollar I make goes right into the current comic I'm making.
Yeah.
So the more I
Yeah.
raise now, the more I can get done before I launch the comic campaign. So
That becomes the system basically. Once you start into the crowdfunding system, that's kind of how it works. It's like, yeah,
yeah.
you don't fucking buy a fucking car with your crowdfunding. You know what I mean? It's like, no, man, you're putting it back into like the next campaign, the next book, because you want to keep going and you want it to be better and all that good shit. So let's all right, let me check out this trailer. I'm gonna see if I can full screen this. I'm not sure if it works or not. Oh, there we go. Cool, man. I like the music, dude.
Thank you.
Who is that any friend of yours that did it, or is it just
No, I use epidemicsound.com,
okay?
which is royalty-free music. Like some really, really good stuff too. It's like
That's
I don't know
cool.
if it's like $90 a year or something, but if you use
Okay.
a lot of music for YouTube videos and stuff, it's pretty good.
What is it called again? Because I do that. What is it?
Epidemicsound.com.
Epidemic. I'll
Yep.
check it out.
Yeah.
Because I just love having again all that different independent type music and everything and
hmm
all that. So all right. So yeah. So okay. So 2 years actually over about 2 years. And okay, now what would you consider this like when it comes to like the genre of this story? Is this like is you consider this like a dark fantasy or horror or
It's kind of a blend. I mean,
yeah,
it's probably traditionally urban fantasy since its setting is Detroit, modern day.
gotcha,
But it is more dark and gritty. So a little bit of dark fantasy, a little bit of Lovecraftian horror, more on the psychological side of things, and
cool,
then a little bit of science fiction too, because there's a lot of neuroscience tied into the storyline as well. So really didn't focus on the genre, just kind of blended all the ideas together, and this is what happened.
yeah, no, and again, I think a lot of us do the same thing where it's just not one specific kind of genre. It's like two, three, four sometimes combined. So
Mhm.
but okay, this is this considered a superhero? The main
uh,
character?
I wouldn't call him a superhero. Yeah, I would essentially just call him a vigilante with some celestial powers. So,
Cool.
with him being a gargoyle, right? He's got some enhanced strength, some more, beast-like abilities, enhanced, smell, senses like
Hmm.
that.
So he like
Tiger-like
so this is
claws.
this is the character who
Night vision.
transforms into that.
Yep, yep, yep,
Cool. Cool.
yep. So he is mortal though, and he
Okay.
does have boundaries in regards to who or what he can kill, but
Okay.
essentially, yeah, he's mortal. So I don't really call him a superhero, but
Hmm.
I mean, some might consider him that.
That's cool. That's cool. And yeah, again, a variety of artwork. I remember I actually saw this. I saw this on Twitter whenever the hell you posted that. I don't know when, but I was like, that's my kind of shit. Because
hmm
I'm into the whole medieval dark fantasy stuff, and I'm like, yeah. So
Yep.
that's cool.
Yeah. The backstory of the character goes into a lot of celestial and like biblical lore, and then
Cool.
ties in some medieval stuff as well.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah. So again, it takes place in modern day, but yet it kind of has that ancient medieval stuff going on. Now, is there any sort of subtle or subliminal, like a religious kind of line going on here? Or?
Not really. I mean, obviously, since one of the main settings is a Catholic church, and
Okay.
the grimoire itself is tied to more, let's say, celestial beings.
Right.
I pulled a lot of inspiration, from, let's say, Catholicism, but at the same time, it doesn't like push the religion or anything. If anything, what it did was, like, the priest is very unique for a Catholic priest, and I kind of created him in the sense of, like, hey, this is what I wish a Catholic priest was like, right? I wish they had these qualities. I wish, like, they were able to be married, or married in the past, things like that.
Right.
They seek their motivation beyond the Pope, right? Things like that. So little things like that, but really doesn't push religion by any means. So
there's your father. Is it Ephraim?
Yep.
The priest. Yep. Cool.
Yeah, he cusses and drinks.
They all do. I hate to tell you. Some even do worse. Okay, yeah, this seems the Lovecraftian, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I am not an expert on H.P. Lovecraft, but I'm very familiar with it. Yeah, you got a good team here. So yeah, you're creator, writer, cover and two. Yeah, variant covers. Yeah, cool. And right. Yeah, book 3. So here you go. Okay, this is what you're working on. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So my funny little story is the other day I thought, well, if I'm going to be going on this stream with Turner, I need to, like, he's got these comic books, so I need to get his comic books so I can read them real quick before we do the stream.
Right.
And I was like, well, if I order comic books, like, it's going to take a while for them to actually be delivered. So I'll just go ahead and I'll get the digital ones.
Yeah,
I can just scan through them real quick. I can figure it out and we can talk about it.
Right.
And so then I bought them.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, these books.
Yep.
I opened it up and I was like, 250 pages. These aren't
the novels.
I was like, these are like graphic novels. These things are thick. And then I started scrolling. And I was reading like an interlog, and I'm like, okay, so he's got like a whole first page. It's like almost like a novel. And then I kept scrolling, and I was like, oh, he sent me an actual fucking novel.
Yep.
Yeah. So
again, it's like mixed. Like I said, it's like, it's not just a comic, it's not just a novel. It's kind of like both. You know what I
mean? He's written novels, and he's using comic style art to promote them.
Gotcha. That's cool.
He saw the comic world and he busted through the wall like Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah.
That's cool. I mean, dude, you know this, BA. The crowdfunding is tricky to say, at least. You gotta, I don't know, man. It's tricky. You have to, I guess, constantly think of new ways to promote yourself or present something or something. So whatever you do. And if you're mostly a novelist and you got into the comic community, then good, do it, because that's what you kind of have to do. There's so much competition in, you said the indie novels. It sounds crazy. That sounds crazy. But, we know indie comics is the same way. I mean, there really is a lot. You've got 3 crowdfunding platforms and tons of books on every platform. And then in addition to digital, global comics, and God knows whatever, you know what I mean? So there is a lot of competition. And with Tyler, you mentioned about the music industry. And yeah, great. I got a megaphone. Awesome. But there's 50,000 people who have the same damn thing. Indie comics is very similar. There's a lot of people out there promoting stuff. So yeah, man, whatever works. It's almost like the whole ends justifies the means. You know what I mean? It's like whatever fucking works, man. Do it. That's how I see it.
You were Parker. You were talking about the other day was talking about like covers and thumbnails and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he was also saying like, if you got just a cover, it kind of shows what your character might look like or whatever, but then you might end up forgetting later on. Like, if you're an author and you've got to have a cover. It kind of seems like a no-brainer, but make sure your cover has something to do with what your story is.
True.
True. And if you have an actual character on the cover, make sure that character looks like a character in your story.
Yeah.
I've literally gotten a hold of a book before with like a girl on the front with long flowing brown hair, and in the opening pages, it's the protagonist is looking in the mirror, defining, or she's acknowledging herself, which is I don't do. You're not supposed to do that, but she was, because that author's not so good. And the first thing out of her mouth, she said, she was like flowing her hands through her blonde hair.
Wow.
And I'm like, blonde hair. Flip back to the cover. I'm like, who's this bitch?
Yeah.
Like,
no, man.
How'd you do that?
Accuracy. And again, I am my own worst nightmare when it comes to my artwork. I am constantly referring back to other drawings and all sorts of shit, because I am now like a paranoid, because I've seen so much fucking criticism on YouTube and Twitter of I mean, just fucking artwork, just the artwork, not to mention the book itself or what it characters, but there are people that like analyze the shit out of the artwork, and one little fucking thing in the background corner that's wrong, and then they tweet it all over the place. Look, you suck. I'm just like, oh, for Christ's sake. It's like, you don't want that. I don't want that to fucking happen. So I'm like, everything's got to be fucking perfect. And it probably doesn't, but that's what you're kind of dealing with. It's like, I'd rather have all the fucking, it's like,
there's like this
I's dotted, the T's crossed, in case someone does analyze the shit out of my stuff sometime. I don't want to make it easy for them. It's like, you better really fucking dig if you're gonna like tear my shit apart. You know what I mean? So
I was gonna say, there's like this reverse thing for people's age when it comes to birthdays.
Yeah.
So like, you'll have somebody's birthday and maybe they're like turning 30. They're like, this is their 30th birthday. And like, hey, old man, I slow down, old man, stuff like that, and give them a hard time. But then you'll have some like grandpa or something. It's like their 85th birthday, 90th birthday, and you're like, happy birthday, young man, looking good. Like the scales always flip. It'd be nice if in art, in comics and things, when it's an indie artist, if it kind of sucks, you're like, that looks pretty good.
Right.
And then if they're like a pro and it's not so good, it might be really good, and they're like a pro, be like, yeah, I've seen better.
Yeah.
It's not so good.
Yeah.
Give them a hard time.
Not that way. If only, but no, it's not that way. Well, listen, man, I think we've been here over an hour, which is cool. I always try to hit an hour.
Any comment questions on YouTube? I'm seeing Danny pop in sometimes.
She's been steady. She's been here still. I've been posting her. She hasn't really. I don't think she has any questions. She's been commenting about a lot of stuff. Yeah. She's cool, man. She's in Berlin, Germany. She was one of my first backers of my first book, and she is still a great fan, dude. She's fucking. I love her to death. So there she is. Yay, love ya. So yeah, Dan, we're gonna wrap this up, Dan, if you have any questions. But basically, BA, your campaign is going for another like month. Okay, yep. So keep pushing that. And then Tyler, yours is this summer, right?
That's kind of what I'm shooting for. Nothing in stone yet, but
right. But and that's now you're not doing the crowdfunding. You're doing strictly Amazon, straight to Amazon.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, when I've told you this before, but when you are getting near that time, let me know, and I'll try to fucking promote that shit too.
Yeah, same here, man. I'll definitely push it on my channel and stuff. Just let me know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So, all right. Well, is there any other comments, last comments, questions, anything?
Oh, just thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
That's
Thanks for
cool.
your guys' support.
Talk a little bit to Turner about his book. I've read some of it, or at least the
Oh,
first one.
nice.
Yeah, I just
Nice.
got it the other day, but I've only read 11 chapters, so
Only, that's quite a
I
bit.
don't know the whole story yet.
That's cool.
Nice.
But from
Hell yeah.
what I've experienced so far, his story feels like visually, like aesthetically, it certainly conjures imagery of the classic Disney Channel Gargoyle show, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
Nice.
I have all the NECA figures up on my cabinets.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's cool.
So it reminds me of that just because of the gargoyle feature, and
Mhm.
lots of the same kind of imagery, glowing eyes during the transformations, breaking through concrete, and all that good stuff.
Cool.
Mhm.
The thunderous voice and flowing black hair, that's all there. But it's got more of a darker atmosphere, so it kind of reminds me of like the 90s Spawn animated series in that regard.
Mhm.
All right, that
There's
was cool. I
even
remember.
there's even the old man trope, or the old man wise man kind of
Mhm.
influencer. So in the story, you've got the father. In the Spawn, the father, ever in terms of like priest.
Mhm.
In Spawn, he had the former Spawn, the old man in the alleyways. The difference there, though, is Spawn, he doesn't actually seek out any trouble. He doesn't seek out problems because he's a hell spawn. Villainy and evil kind of is drawn to him. He can't escape it. It's
Right.
more of a curse. Bad
Right.
people just keep coming to him. Whereas in Turner's story, Slade he's got the initiative. He's seeking out the problems.
That's cool.
However, for that aspect, he's more like a vigilante. So he's wanting to go out and kind of crime fight in a way, but it's also it's kind of reminiscent of like the old original Batman. So he's not just a warrior of the night, but the original Batman was kind of like a Sherlock Holmes crime investigator. So
Investigator.
putting pieces together, trying to solve the, finding clues, trying to solve everything. So the character gets a hold of a laptop and just starts putting in the work and starts trying to hunt down people and learn what he can about them before he goes out on the night and starts trying to clean up the filthy streets of, was it Detroit? Is that right?
Mhm.
Detroit. Okay.
Yep. Detroit.
And but his jag is kind of it's a religious kind of thing. It's a little bit in that ballpark, as he kind of grew up in that way. And so I'm not familiar with Moon Knight. I don't know if it's familiar, like if it's like Moon Knight, because I think Moon Knight's like a Christian Catholic character, isn't he? It's a comic book character.
I think so, but I actually have not
I've
read
never
any of the Moon Knights.
read
I don't
any
know
either.
much. Yeah.
I don't either. I know of him, like if I saw a draw, because it looks cool as fucking drawings. I don't know anything about him.
I think Moon Knight is supposed to be like a Christian,
really
Catholic thing or something.
Same with Daredevil is like Daredevil, especially in the TV show, right? He seeks a lot of wisdom and guidance from a priest, and he's, I think, technically Christian. So it's kind of where I drew some of that inspiration as well.
It's cool.
There's like I said, I'm only on chapter 11, so I don't know where the full story goes, but so far it seems like there's also a bit of a demonic jag to it, and so that kind of conjures something kind of like a Ghost Rider kind of story. So, but instead of it being like with Ghost Rider, he gets his powers from like demons and hell, kind of like Spawn. It doesn't seem like that's the case for Slade. His situation seems like it's a little more angelic, but we'll see. But he's certainly wanting to use those powers to these enhanced abilities to go out and fight crime and clean up the streets. And he keeps encountering certain individuals that are a little inhuman.
Mhm.
They it seems like the light in their eyes has left.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Yep.
so yeah, he's on a mission to stomp out not just bad people, but it seems like evil people, or should I say,
Yeah.
soulless people.
Mhm.
That's cool. Good. Thanks for not having spoilers too. You're very good at you're good
Navigating.
at talking stories without ruining shit for future readers. So that's cool.
No,
So
that's great to hear. You definitely, I mean, on target with things, and that's
that's cool.
good to be able to tell that like I was able to lay things out right to where
Yeah.
it was able to be followed decently. So
Right. Feedback, and we all know, feedback's awesome, especially when you get someone who, reads your book or comic, whatever, and they actually can throw the fucking names of the characters back at
Mhm.
you or whatever. You know what I mean? Because, some people, oh yeah, it's good. Awesome. Anything else? Anything else? No. Okay. That's cool. But when you get those ones where like, you know what? That character, then it's just like, oh, they fucking really pay attention. That's cool. So again, Tyler, you're good that way. And like I said, that initial review you did of my shit a while ago was just fucking awesome as shit. So it's cool hearing that with BA too, because again, you're one of those people who actually reads and I almost like dissects the stuff, and I think it's kind of rare because a lot of people, if they do it, they don't really talk about it. You know what I mean? They don't, really talk about it. They would just be like, "Oh yeah, it was good."
I just really respect, not like I just respect creativity and like
Yeah.
people who try to create stuff.
Yeah.
At the beginning, Kurt, you was talking about, how you're all about comics, but you're bringing on these novelists and stuff, and you're like trying to pull what you can from different areas.
Yeah.
When I first started trying to get into novel writing, I was looking around on YouTube and I was, taking advice from people who were, giving how to write a novel and how to self-edit a novel. But I also
Right.
looked at, comic books. I was
Mhm.
looking at people talking about how to structure comic books. I was watching people how like they were teaching how to structure screenplays and writing movies. And like
Yeah.
it's you would think it's the same, but it's not. There's a difference there in how these certain stories are constructed.
Right.
Even coming across certain like really intricate things like understanding how like the core of how like stories are structured. Like there's a whole concept of how Western stories are, and you've got your the 3-act structure of the West,
Right.
and this whole you've kind of commented on, or I guess like some of the stuff I posted talking about how in the West it's all about controlling your destiny, and
Yeah.
you're all about trying to change the world. And
Right.
in the West, one of the sins is you don't want to have not what's the word reactive character. You want your character to be proactive, be causing the change in the story. That's a Western philosophy.
Mhm.
When you go into the East, everything changes.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah, everything's the opposite. In the East, it's not about controlling your destiny. In the East, the idea is you can't control your destiny. It's just the lot that you have.
Yeah.
In the East, it's not about changing the world. It's about trying to survive and adapting to the world.
Yeah.
In the West, you change the world. In the East, the world changes you.
Changes you.
Yeah. And it's about and so there's the whole thing in the West is you got to create the conflict. You have a goal, you go out of your way and you solve the problem. You get what you want, In the East, it's all about keeping your head down, not causing problems, just trying to be part of the collective, being part of the crowd.
Yeah.
And then in your timidness and trying to just go along and be peaceful, a villain shows up or a conflict shows up and it forces you out of your comfort zone. There's this twist. And so for the first, I'd say about 45% of the story in the East, it's very tame and chill because you're setting the normalcy of way the story is supposed to be. And instead of the big climax of like defeating the villain or confronting it, what you have is the twist in the story where everything is turned on its head, and now the character is suddenly like homeless, or suddenly the character's family's all dead, and they're like, now what do I do? And they have to adjust. Or the bad guy shows up and he's like, I'm challenging you, and you're like, what, me? And so it's in the West, you have, because the West tends to lean on like the Christian Bible. In the West, it's every character is supposed to be David from David versus Goliath. So it's in the classic story, David stands up. He takes the initiative to step out of the crowd and says, I challenge you, Goliath.
Right.
That's the Western mindset. But if that story was Eastern, David would be just chilling in the crowd, like, please don't see me. Please don't see me. And Goliath would say, you little man, I challenge you. And then David's like, oh, man, all I got is a sling and a rock. And they're like, yeah, I challenge you. And then because he doesn't choose the destiny, it's already written for him. When he steps forward in that moment, it's revealed, oh, he's a hero. We would have never known. So the world brought the conflict to his doorstep.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's cool. Again, all sorts of ways, storytelling ways. Again, from movies all the way down to comics and stuff. And so it's cool, and it's just good. I like having that versatility of independent creators. And we're seeing it, and that's what's cool. And like the three of us are like three examples of. We don't fit one particular mold, you know what I mean? It's like you kind of, it's almost like adapting. I see it as like go with the flow. It's like, well, fuck, times change, and so you got to change with them. You got to go with the flow. You know what I mean? If you stand too rigid, you may get snapped in two. But I think it's cool the people that do stand rigid, because there are, people who love classic. Just they keep their shit old school classic, and it's cool. I don't want that to go away. It's just cool to have other options and to see other creators look at things differently. Like, that's cool, but maybe let's try this angle. You know what I mean? And I just kind of see that with people. And
I was watching one thing. I was talking. A guy was talking about. I wish I knew what to look up, because I want to look into it more. I just one video. That's cool, and then I don't know what it was. Anyway, so he's talking about the old, like really old ancient mythology of Ireland, and he's talking about the way the stories of the Irish were, the way their ancient people would tell stories, and it's really fascinating because their stories, they're, you could say linear, but not really. They're more like a tree. And the concept is, because tree and life. And so the story is going to branch out. And so really what happens is when you have their stories, instead of, I'll use like Marvel terms to make it pretty clear. Instead of the story being about Spider-Man, about how he gets his powers, he defeats the villains, end of story, or gets the girl, and for like the myths, the way it would be is it would start with Spider-Man, and you would see his evolving, and then while he's doing his Spider-Man thing, he crosses paths with a guy named Iron Man, and then before you know it, you've forgotten Spider-Man exists because he's not in the text anymore. We're now following Iron Man over here, and it's his story now. And the reason we were told about Spider-Man was simply because he was the guy that maybe inspired Iron Man or some shit. And it's just the stepping stone that led to Iron Man. And then we read about Iron Man and his conflicts. And then eventually, he crosses paths with a guy named Captain America. And they fight together, and then eventually, Iron Man fades out of the picture, and now it's Captain America's story.
Story focuses and follows. Yeah, that's neat.
And so the whole concept of their stories is more or less like, you're not important. you're an important piece
of the wheel. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like every step, every time, you know, it's just like you might not do something special with your life, but you may have a son, and that son may grow up to do something pretty cool, and that cool thing inspires another guy to do something else.
That's cool.
And when that other guy does something else, he actually does something wrong. And what ends up happening is it causes 50,000 people to die from starvation because he turns out to be a tyrant. So you gotta watch out what you do.
Yeah.
Because down the road, it might cause this tyrant guy.
Yeah.
Or it could be the other way. It could be, you know, you do something and it inspires this hero to rise up and defeat the tyrant or whatever.
Right.
And then it's showing how you have a story, but your story overlaps with other people's stories. And together we all have a bigger story. And it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Nice.
All right, man. Well, gentlemen, again, thanks both of you for coming on and hanging out all night and telling us your stories. And
Thanks for having me.
that's what it's all about. Yeah, man. And again, you know, BA, keep at it, man. And yeah, it sounds like you're going to be busy between your novel and the comic, so you got full plate. And again, I know Tyler, you're going to be releasing your stuff, and so yeah, man, it's cool. So again, thanks for hanging out.
Thanks.
And we will. Yeah, you're welcome, man. We'll see you guys. We will see you guys around here and Twitter and everywhere else. So
Sounds good, guys.
cool. All right, everyone, have a good night.
Guys.
Thanks for hanging out in chat, Danny, and whoever else, and watching. And y'all have a good one.
Like and subscribe, you losers.
Thank you. Like and subscribe. Thanks for reminding me. See, I need to use a fucking co-host. I swear to God. All right. Good night, everybody.
See you guys.